Hello everyone, welcome to a new podcast episode. This is episode number 18 and I have for you a great guest. His name is Bilal Alavi. He is the head of customer solution and CVP of this region and Africa and Eastern and Mid Europe. He works for Visa and we're going to talk about digital payments. It's his personal opinions that he will be expressing with us. So he's not talking on behalf of Visa. But because he's an expert, we're so glad that we have him here. Bilal, welcome.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yes, look, I wanted to talk with you for quite some time, so I'm so glad that you could come here. Maybe you can start with introducing yourself, like, who's Bilal, how did you ended up where you are right now, and what was your path towards that situation? Did you always want to work in digital payments, or did you ended up there by accident?
Yeah, well, by accident, but it's a long story.
We have time.
I started in Pakistan. I'm originally from Pakistan. I did my master's there, and then I started working for Citibank. And the reason why I started working for Citi is that when you're in Pakistan, your careers are either engineering, doctor, or banking, more or less, right? From heading into building your career, right? So that's the direction generally that we were given in that time. Now it's very different now. So when we started at Citi was an international company. So I worked for a year in Pakistan, and after that I moved to Bahrain with Citi itself, and I worked in Bahrain for a period of 9.5 years. I was in payments, so I set up the cards business for Citibank Bahrain, and then went on to lead it, and then from there we went to Egypt, and I was heading the cards business and the marketing for Citibank Egypt for a couple of years, and then we moved back to Bahrain with American Express. I was leading their region as well for 2.5 years across Middle East and North Africa. And post that, I joined Citibank again. Citibank is my parent company, right? I've enjoyed working with them for a long time. So I moved back with Citi, but this time I worked in Europe, where I was heading the cards business again for Citi in Czech Republic. And I was doing, some coverage of Hungary credit card business as well. So post that, we moved back to Dubai, closer to home. My family is based out of Pakistan, as you know, so we moved back to Visa, where I was head of consulting for Saudi Arabia, based out of Dubai. And post that, now I head the product division across Central Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
Yeah, that's quite a journey. And did you think at one point that you would even end up in the banking industry when you were younger and in university, and you were thinking like you were, envisioning your life later, or was that also something that you wrote into more or less by chance?
Yes, and yes, I mentioned by accident, right? So
Yeah.
yes, wanted to be a professional cricketer.
Okay.
I played for the domestic structure when I was in the 13s and 14s.
Yeah.
So I represented Karachi for a couple of games. An interesting story. I was selected for one of the teams, right, when I was 16, right before post my A levels and pre my bachelor's. So I took a letter of selection. There were almost 2,500 people in that. They were selecting close to 25, and I was in that 25. So I was very proud of myself, and I took that letter across to my mom, and she tore it up into pieces. So my career cricket was dead from that day, right? So I had to go study, still play it from an amateur perspective. Represented the Czech Republic national team. But obviously now too old to represent any team except group of friends.
Nice that you still made it to representing a national team. That's very honorable. And that moment that you were at high when you had that list to like the opposite in like what 10 seconds.
Yeah, it was just cricket is in the blood for a lot of South Asians, right? So if you think about it from our perspective, when we grow up, we play on the streets. From there, we head out and we try to play as much as possible. So for me, it was a dream,
Yeah.
and I always wanted to represent Pakistan, but wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, sometimes it's good to have that ambition and dream and passion for a sport. It's just that sometimes your parents as well, and so they also want the best for you, and they
Exactly.
just don't want you to end up on a path as a 24-year-old, not having a club and being a super talent, but it's not working out. Yeah, but this did work out, and I'm sure your mother is now like, see, I put you on the right path.
Yeah, I have no regrets. I mean, it's been good. I still got to play cricket. Obviously,
Yeah.
not at professional level, but played all my life. Been playing for 37 years. But what sports does, right? When you start working, it puts you in a competitive mode, and you're working to achieve goals, and that
Yeah.
helps you in your professional career, right? So
True.
I think in my case, I found payments interesting.
Yeah.
And evolving constantly, right? So when I was heading cards, and I had an experience of almost 16 years in the banking industry, people used to ask me how much I knew about cards and payments, right? And I always used to say I know 5-6%, because the minute I increase it, things change and evolve. So because of that perspective, that evolution, I don't think there's anybody that can claim that they know the payments industry, right? Because it's constantly evolving.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about the evolution of digital payments. Like for people that are not like 24/7 involved in it, when did it start? Where are we right now, and where are we heading towards?
It's a good question. Let me start with payments first, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and then come to digital payments, and then to where we are today, and then what is expected, right? So in 1950, there was a gentleman called Frank McNamara, if I got the name right.
Yeah.
He was at a diner, and he was dining with his wife, and he realized he's forgotten his wallet. And the numerous stories, numerous different versions.
Yeah.
One of the versions is he had to wash dishes.
Yeah.
The other version was his wife paid for him, and there's another version that is he called his friends and they came with cash. But all in all, it prompted him to think about an IOU system, which essentially meant that if I don't have the payment at that point in time and can pay later, I should put a form of IOU in place,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So he in 1958 he founded a company called Diners Club. We all know Diners Club. We've heard of it. And Diners Club formed the first credit card that essentially started the payments evolution. So this was the first instance where payments from a IOU perspective started. Post that, as things evolved, people started getting more into payments. They still didn't take off much, but there were batches of 2,000, 3,000 cards sent out from Diners Club to people who, and essentially it was focused around dining, right? The concept grew further in 1974 when Bank of America launched their America card, right? Actually 1958, somewhere in the 1960s, early 1960s. And in 1974, America card coincidentally became Visa, right? So from that perspective, payments has grown exponentially. Now, when the system of payments came into being post that period, it still hadn't evolved beyond a credit card or an IOU system. It hasn't evolved into digital, right? But in 1974, I believe it was Stanford Credit Union that started online payments as a first instant. And then we know about PayPal. PayPal came into being with Elon Musk founding it. And then PayPal and eBay, which was the online auction house, started to work together a lot more closely until eBay acquired PayPal. I think in that period in the late 90s, and then Amazon was also coming up. That period of online commerce prompted the growth or acceptance of digital payments in that era, right? So if you look at the foundation blocks, these are the companies that essentially brought it forward. And online payments was the first form of digital payments. So now when we look back, and I told you that I'll come to the now period, if you look at it now, digital payments is far more than just online payments. You've got digital wallets. You've got face-to-face tap devices. The next form of evolution from online payments was actually contactless payment, where contactless, when you tap and go, the card, right? So if you have a card and you tap it, that's what initially got the technology that led us to the evolution where we have today towards mobile devices, towards phones, even biometric, right? But the contactless payments was the next building block. So first was online payments, second was contactless, and contactless started the evolution of acceptance of cards without taking it out of your pocket, or just tapping it on the go, or having it in your wallet and just tapping the wallet. So once you started doing that, the near field communication technology, the NFC technology, allowed the operators, the mobile operators, to start thinking about how this could be incorporated within the phone itself, because the phone is something you always carry. And because of that, you've seen acceptance grow exponentially, because people have now started moving towards the mobile phone, the digital wallets embedded within the phone to use. Now, post that, then Apple came into the picture. You've got Google coming into the picture, where they have Google Pay, Apple Pay, which made it even more seamless from a security perspective, from a overall acceptance perspective. So when you look at the journey started with online payments, actually payments, then online payments, then you've got contactless, post contactless, you've got the digital means embedded into the phone. So yeah, it's been a very interesting evolution across the last 30 odd years in terms of digital payments, but there's still a lot more to come. Sorry, you were saying something.
No, I was not saying something. I was just thinking about like my own experience. Like right now, when I make transfers, I just do biometrics now,
Correct.
which is so handy because I have so many passwords for different bank accounts, and I just don't remember. And then also I don't have to have security like codes anymore because they know it's me. Biometrics is very apparently very secure. And then I was thinking about like that I never thought how that also was integrated into digital payments, how in the end all of that comes together, and that is also part of the evolution, that we have the biometrics connected with the digital payments. So when you were explaining this, I was like, wow, it's actually a much bigger world than just the payment itself. It's also everything connected around that.
Yeah, and the next step is that exactly right, where the form factor would not matter. The form factor being the plastic, right? The form factor is slowly disappearing. So you barely see people take out credit cards, at least in Dubai, right? So and each country and each region is in a different phase of evolution. There are still countries which are purely focused on cash and not on the card, and even if the card exists as the physical form. But when you look at Dubai, right? Dubai has evolved tremendously fast in terms of the evolution for payments. And when I barely carry my wallet, right? I keep my card in my phone, right? And generally as a backup, because I don't even use it. It's just the tap or the watch, the Apple Watch, right? It's either of the two. So, but to answer your question on the biometric evolution, now think about the future. The future is essentially you walk in and you want to make a payment. They scan either your eyes or take a fingerprint, and your payments will be done. So your payment integration into biometrics acceptance is going to grow. The only need is that there is infrastructure involved, right? So that setup will come, but the technology exists today. So today there are biometric payment methodologies that exist. It's just that they need to evolve beyond acceptance into the normal framework, where today the device is more about the tap and go, where the verification is linked to a payment means. Tomorrow it is going to evolve into you as an individual, and you has already the connectivity of credit, of your debit, and whatever you choose to pay. So you could tap it and go. In some part of the world, I have heard, especially in Europe, that they are embedding chips within the fingertips, which essentially are NFC, that you just tap and go, and you don't have to carry any form of payment because everything is linked back to that chip.
Yeah, that's looks like a science fiction movie.
Correct.
But it's becoming reality. I don't know if it's true, but I've heard about like that they're already doing pilots in China with face scanning and eye scanning payments.
Correct.
And whenever they do a pilot, they just can do it on millions, and then it's still small compared to their mass market. But it's very interesting to see when it rolls out on the bigger scale, if it rolls out, how the integration will be and what that will impact on the society, because all these biometrics and all these other parts became so vital for a phone became so important. I mean, one of the reasons why phones have become more important. But if that's taken away from a phone, will be a phone still as relevant as it is today?
I think, it's a good point. The evolution is heading towards instantaneous payments, right? Essentially, if you think about it. And the means to an end is today the phone, because you carry it with you. Tomorrow the phone may also evolve, if you think about it, right? I mean, I've seen some sci-fi movies where you've got, a chip embedded here. When the phone rings, you answer it and you talk, and you don't need to carry anything. So there are so many things that are happening across in every industry. I think it's important to think of them not in isolation but in conjunction. And when you think of them in conjunction, you'll notice that there are so many synergies that they draw from each other. So if the phone evolves, so is the payment. If the payment is evolving, so is the phone. So I think it's connected, and you'll see this happening in the future. And I think the technology is growing by leaps and bounds, right? I mean, if you think about it, if you go back 15 years, you couldn't imagine what's happening in the world today. I couldn't, right? I mean, it's evolved so quickly. I think that's exactly the point I was trying to make, right? The evolution and pace of technology is spurring the growth of every I wouldn't call it payment means, but every interaction and customer touch point, right? Whether it's in payments, whether it's you're going to a government office 30 years ago to going to a government office today, wherever you are, everything is evolving in terms of making the process and customer experience a lot more seamless. One other point, and this is a very important point, right? If you think about pre-COVID and post-COVID, right? Huge shift in customer preferences and perceptions for shopping, right? Pre-COVID was essentially more face-to-face, more I want to check the shoe size, I want to check the shirt size, I want to go physically touch it. And payments were there online and digital, but it was more for things that they didn't need to, wear or fit. Now it's simple. They just do a scan, look at the size. They do a virtual check. There are virtual rooms that you can go and actually try on the dresses.
Yeah, I have seen those,
right?
programs.
So it's even in Amazon, if you take a scan and you're buying a sofa, you can actually place the sofa in your living to see how it looks like, right? Take a snapshot and then see if it looks good or not. So the digital payments on that front, pre and post COVID, and online acceptance and online usage has actually changed the dynamics in a number of markets which weren't actually accepting digital payments earlier as much as they are now.
Yeah, definitely. I see, for example, for myself, for shoes, I would never thought I would buy them online, but then recently, even from buying at stores, I made mistakes, and then I'm like, okay, I made the same mistakes that I thought I would not make if I would buy it from the store, which is too small. So I just, there were companies where you can buy shoes and you can try it out at home. If you don't like it, within X amount of hours, you get a refund.
Correct.
And guess what? It worked. I was like, wow, I don't have to go there, waste my time doing it easy at home. And that's, again, then a market lost for the retails, face-to-face, but a market gained for the online retail and for digital payments then, because everything is paid digital instead of me being there at the shop, maybe paying by cash.
No, absolutely. And I've ordered things that I never thought I'd order online, right? Even in COVID, I had a TV ordered. I normally am very critical about ordering TVs, right? I do the research online, I look at YouTube videos and reviews.
You like it, huh? You want to talk with them as well.
So and warranties and things like that, right? If it goes wrong. I've ordered a TV 3.5 years ago, and it's working fine, no issues.
Yeah, but funny that you say that because I ordered a TV online, which was perfectly fine until my oldest daughter like tore it off from the wall. um, and so I thought like, okay, I will get a TV. So the next morning I went because it's a kind of a thing that you miss instantly. So I went to the store and I bought the TV, and it's actually I paid the same, but it's not as good quality. And I should have just reordered the
The
same
earlier
one.
one, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I did a better job online. And this is the funny part. We have these preconceptions. This is not possible to be
yeah.
done like that until it's done.
Correct. And the thing is, right, I mean, if you think about it, you go to the the face-to-face interaction is important where things are more personal in nature, right? So you may need to get personal services, and you may not, you don't want to get them at home, you know, the spas and, you know, the experiences that you want. So you'd rather take that at a physical level, right? But if you're thinking from a perspective of you know, the material things, right? I have realized that you really don't need to think from a face-to-face interaction perspective. You can actually go and order online. The flexibility of returns is instantaneous returns, at least in our part of the world here, is amazing. I mean, because you like it or you don't like it, irrespective of whatever it is, whether it's the size fit or whether it doesn't look right, you
Yeah.
can still return it, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's the same flexibility that you have, you know, going to the store. So, people prefer either this to over going and, you know, spending time. And, you know, there are positives going to the mall also, if you think about it,
Yeah.
right? There are positives of the kids running around, the positives of the food, etc., and the experience. So, like I say, right, the experience itself is, if you are wanting to have that experience, you still can. But if you really just want to save time and you're thinking about just getting that element of the device, or, you know, anything else that you're ordering online, is the way to go.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting to see, for example, you said about spas. I was seeing now that, who was this? I think it was Kareem was suddenly adding like a feature, order now at home a spa.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what? I can
Exactly.
get a spa at home?
Yeah,
And yeah.
it's interesting. I mean, you got ancillary service. If you go to Amazon today, for example,
Yeah.
and I know this is not an advertisement for Amazon, but
Yeah.
it's got Amazon Home Services, and in Home Services you have a host of things. I had my digital, so I was struggling to fit my Ring doorbell.
Yeah.
This is 3 years ago. So Ring doorbell, nobody was like an expert in it, right?
Yeah.
But then Amazon Home Services started, and they have experts for everything. So you have, you know, your light bulbs, your everything. Like, when anything that you don't want to do, you've got a service there.
Wow.
So it's the digital world is evolving, right, and interfacing with the physical world, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
They're not independent of each other. This is what I was just
Yeah,
trying to say.
and it opens also a market for businesses that normally are not able.
Absolutely.
Right? Because they have this great product and they are looking for customers. Customers are looking for that great product or services, and then suddenly, by knowing how to charge them and them knowing how to pay them, they can come together. And that is what, you know, companies like, you know, digital companies like, you know, Visa and PayPal and MasterCard and all of them facilitate.
Yeah, correct. It's not just the goods and services. It's also so it's not just goods. It's services as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, services in terms of handyman services. Yeah. And, you know, when we moved into Dubai and when we were in Egypt, when we
Yeah.
were in Czech Republic, one of the things was that when we used to get settled in a new home with all the furniture and everything, you need a handyman, right?
Yeah.
So we were struggling to figure out where to go, what to do, right? Who to call, and we're calling in favors from people who moved before us, and we were asking them. Now it's simple. I mean, even in Dubai, right, you've got handyman services. There's a certain charge for it. Just pick up the number of hours and call.
Yeah.
So yeah, services, and what it does is, like you rightly said, it gives local businesses the viewability, the because all they have to do is sign up as a provider.
Yeah.
And you go through these giants, right? These retail giants online, which essentially then allows the credibility to be built into their service, because obviously they have to be certified, blah blah blah, And then as they start performing, they get more and more business because then it becomes word of mouth. So it helps local businesses also proliferate. So it's a good idea to integrate services into digital payments as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think it's also like the way you collect the money as well. Um, I think it's also safer for both sides. So if you give cash to somebody and they get a lot of cash and they collect that cash, one, you put them in a situation that they need to be fully trusted that they bring the cash back, which is of course always a temptation. I'm not
Correct.
saying people cannot do it. I'm just saying, why put people in such a temptation? And the second is, what if it doesn't get accounted for properly? I've seen this happening where they came back to me. They said, "Oh no, this." I said, "I gave you the money. I don't know what happened. I even lost money from my pocket." And and it can happen. And so how can you account properly for the transactions and store them, and also see when it happened and verify that the payment happened?
Correct.
So I think that is also a great benefit for business owners.
Absolutely, and even for consumers, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's having a record of every transaction that you have done and where you've done it, what the value is. If you do it in cash, you don't have it except the receipts, and you can't be carrying receipts, right? So tomorrow, if I have to look, so one thing that we've done as a family, right? We've tried to categorize our transactions running through only payments or payment cards, right? So majority of our transactions or cost or what we pay for happens in cards, and
Yeah.
you can find out how much you're spending in grocery, how much. So it keeps an account from an individual perspective, and the same thing for businesses, right?
Yeah.
So you've got business, transfers, payments, or when you're paying to other companies rather than cash. If you pay through digital, everything is categorized, details of the payment, for what reason it is. So it helps businesses. It also helps regulate, a lot more closely the activity from a business and consumer sense, because then you know that the payment through the right channels are being made and being recorded the proper way rather than cash.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do the same at our household. We try to pay as much as possible by card, and then the end of the month, it is also frustrating sometimes because not always you want whatever you want to pay to be like shown. Like, why did you order so much of that? My wife asked. I said, well, but it's there. But it's a great thing because yeah, you have that stored. You can go back towards it. You can also do some great analysis to see like what is your fixed cost, where is the cost coming from, how
Correct.
can you optimize it, and if it's rising or declining, what's behind that. So you have all that data, which is always stored there, and that is also very helpful.
And yeah, absolutely. And the beauty of it is that you've got reward systems, right? So essentially, if you link when you're paying, you get rewarded also,
Yeah,
right?
that's a big part why we do it. We want the air miles.
Exactly. So you get the option of being rewarded for your payments. In cash you don't, right? So
Yeah.
when you pay on cards and whether it's through the digital means or normal means, right? You get an accumulation of these rewards, and you like cashback, you like miles, you like reward systems, which essentially gives you option to choose from a number of online malls that these banks put up, right? So I think it's a win-win for the consumer. It's a win-win for the businesses when you have an infrastructure set up like this, and only this way is it sustainable.
Yeah.
Because it's benefiting every partner along the way, right? Whether it's the banks, whether it's the the merchants, whether it's the individual consumers, right? Because everything along the payment ecosystem is winning, and
Yeah.
and I think that's the beauty of the payment system as it stands today.
Absolutely. And um, I have family in Norway, so I visit them on a regular basis, and I also go there because it's beautiful nature and there's so much to explore and hike and visit. And when I was there in 2010, I remember well that they did not pay anything in cash. And at that time, I don't think I had a credit card yet. They were just like, no, 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 it's just like we don't use cash. And this was 12 years ago.
Wow. Yeah.
And I heard they wanted to go fully cashless. I think they are already
Yeah.
fully cashless because every time I go there, everything, even the smallest transactions, everybody has like and receive, you know, a payment digitally. Do you think eventually everybody will be at that stage?
I think the evolution to that place is different for every market, right? So, um, while you have the technology and the means in some parts of the world, um, it's not being percolated downwards to individual consumers in some of the markets because there are market dynamics that differ, market regulations that differ, and customer preferences that are different. So, to answer your question, I think that countries that are brave and are willing to head down this route and invest in the infrastructure will move much more quickly.
Yeah.
But there will always be countries that essentially will, be slower to adopt, and not stay behind, but actually adopt their own means of payments, which may not be as efficient, but it would serve the purpose because of the market dynamics and the customer preferences they have. The example I can give you, right, and I won't name countries, but I'm just telling you that there are some countries that are at 98% cash in today's world, where they still rely on that because the cost of the transactions that pass through this ecosystem is very high for merchants. So the merchants are not willing to accept the payments, and because of that, and if they don't accept, they only pass on to the customer, and the customer don't want to get that on their, so instead of being charged $100 for the transaction, if they got charged 105, 110 for every transaction, it adds up, right? So I think the evolution is going to be very, very quick. So in countries like ours here, and in some of the other countries, US, UK, Canada, and these markets, right? They're evolving very, very quickly because they have the willingness and the ability to invest into the infrastructure, because that's very important. Think about the first building block is always the acceptance element, right? So if you have the acceptance of payments, then payments proliferate. But and that requires massive infrastructure changes, etc. So I think it's to answer your question, it depends on the markets, but yes, the evolution is definitely headed in the right direction across the world.
Yeah, but I think that's fair as well. I think that's to say that everybody has their own space, because you need, for example, a bank account, and not everybody in the world has a bank account to deduct whatever IOU you have set out. So how can we expect for people that don't have a bank account yet? Some people don't even have a phone yet. So their credit cannot be checked, if they're credit worthy or not. We cannot put them online, or we cannot put them on the system, even if they want it. So for that group, I think first they need to economically evolve towards that status where they can have
Correct.
that. But for the groups that are already there and could do it, do you think that those countries in general, do you see a push within the countries or within the companies, within the governments, that there is a movement or in general a trend for the countries and economies that are capable and able, that they are willing to go towards that route?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the end goal is the cashless society in a number of developed markets, right? The reason for being cashless is to bring more transparency in transactions, transparency in the ecosystem for monitoring those transactions, and also the customer experience that they want for consumers, right? And for the businesses as well. So yes, to answer your question, I think the evolution is headed in that direction from from the goal being a cashless society for some of these developed markets. And I think it's getting there. If you think about it, in Dubai, for example, I don't use cash, like I was saying, right? I honestly don't use cash. It is always the phone or the card, and I don't even remember the last time I withdrew cash, to be
Yeah.
honest, right? It's even our credit, even our cricket matches payments are online, right? So to that extent, where even the maid that comes to our place is online. The dry cleaner that comes carries a machine with him. So it's
Yeah.
like incredible, right? So we don't, and this is what the future would look like to some of the other developing economies
Yeah.
in the future, right? So it's a great goal to have, because as I said, right, from a regulatory sense also, it's one of the best things to do, and from a consumer preference perspective, it's an ideal thing to have.
I'm smiling because I remember a story um, where I was in a country where often people, when you stop at the traffic light, people come and they ask for money, and then of course I don't have cash in general. I'm not joking. I don't have often cash with me. And then he grabs a machine and he's like, "No problem, you can pay my card." And then I was like, "Wow," you know. So it
Incredible.
will help everybody, including the unfortunate people that need money to collect money. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, if you think about it, from where we were to where we are, right? And it's not just payments. I think generally, as a race, we've come leaps and bounds over the last 30-35 years, right?
Yeah.
Exponentially in everything that we do. So I think things will only get better in terms of payments, in terms of digital infrastructure, in terms of acceptance, in terms of customer experiences for people. So I think we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, and also I think for a government, it's also easier to collect tax if everything is done, with a digital footprint. We can all say fair and square how much we need to give and how much they should collect. So there's a great incentives for
Correct.
governments as well
Yeah,
to
yeah,
make this work.
exactly.
And if we look at in general in this world of digital payments, um, where do we see new projects coming up where, like let's say the crypto world? They're claiming that they're going to replace. I mean, I'm not saying they. I've heard a number of group of people and so-called experts claiming that they're going to wipe out the payment companies, the Mastercards, the Visas, the PayPals, and they will be the ones that are going to be, the market players in future payments. Do you think that they are correct to say that? That there's some truth in it, or what is your opinion on this whole crypto thinking that they're going to wipe out the payment companies?
Um, so, what I would say is that don't think of them as competing.
Mm-hmm.
Think of them as complementary, right? Visa, Mastercard, and the other payment schemes, right? They are essentially rails, and these rails connect, whether
Yeah.
it's domestically, whether it's globally, right? But and what runs on the rails is currency. Currency meaning it could be cash, tomorrow it could be crypto. So if you think about it, it's not competing with any of these companies, or because the currency will run on the rails. So what the future may hold is the integration potentially and of currencies onto these rails. So essentially, it's not about the payment companies being wiped out. More so the focus is more about how do these currencies go mainstream. The only way for them to go mainstream is to integrate with existing rails, because to create their own rails, they're going to take decades, right? If
Yeah.
they set about doing it. And today, there's no patience in decades of infrastructure setup, right? So either you pass or you fail. Even if the acceptance of that currency is there, which it is, right? I mean, crypto is growing exponentially, Bitcoin, all these Ethereum, all the currencies are growing, falling, growing, falling,
Yeah.
volatility is there. But once they stabilize and once they are essentially accepted from a regulatory sense as a currency across most markets, then the only option is essentially is that they will be integrated into the payment ecosystem. And when they get that acceptance, that's when it allows greater acceptance into. So I don't see them as as competing. I see them as complementary. And obviously I'm not a crypto expert, but what I'm saying is that for me the right sense of flow from an evolution perspective of how they're expected to grow and evolve is essential integration into the payments ecosystem as it stands today, rather than work on its own parallel path.
Yeah, I like that. I'm not a active crypto investor, but what I've done is because I know the company and the people in the company quite well. So what they've done is they've set up a crypto and a token company with mining and everything in it. It's like it's a whole utility company with a lot of things in it, and their whole idea is let's work together with the institutions. Let's bring crypto together with the institution. That's their whole mission, and they one of the things that they have achieved is that they sign up an official term of business with Visa, and I can actually pay now in day life with the credit card that is issued, because what happens is the tokens are then converted to cash, and that's how IOU works then with the Visa.
Correct.
Visa collects from them the cash, they collect from me the tokens, and it all comes together. So on a regular basis, the group that I'm involved with, they said like, oh, I paid this with my tokens, and and then I spoke with them as well, the company. I said, how do you do it? How do you make sure that Visa doesn't, collect what they don't want? And they say, well, we just we just give them cash, because they don't accept our tokens as value, which is fair enough. And I see other projects like that starting with other companies, MasterCard, PayPal, etc. I see a lot of discussions happening, and I think that's a better way forward. I think to just see how can you integrate things, how can you collaborate,
Correct.
than to say, yeah, let's wipe out these people, these dinosaurs, and and who's to say that they are dinosaurs and they don't have a place in society as well? So better to just to see where is that common ground, and where can we work together.
As I said, right? I mean, this is an ever evolving um company, right?
Yeah.
Visa, for example, and this is my personal view, right? So, uh, is a network of networks, meaning that it's not just a one dimensional company, right? It works across multiple facets of life for individuals, businesses, consumers, and across the payment ecosystem. So, when you think about crypto, and when you think about all these currencies that are evolving over time, right? I mean, uh, today, for example, there is a Visa crypto card that exists.
Mm-hmm.
There are co-brand cards with crypto that already exist, right?
Yeah.
Crypto.com. So, uh, like I'm saying, the way forward for them is the integration. And I think it's accepted. The more regulated,
Yeah.
the more systematic, because the crypto world is chaotic,
Yeah.
to say the least, right? If you think about it, the volatility that it brings, etc. People are excited about it, but people have lost money as well, right? So,
Yeah.
I think the stability that will come once the regulatory aspect comes into play will help it to systematically integrate into the payment ecosystem, and that should essentially, help all
Yeah.
involved, right? Because essentially it's another currency, and that currency of value will still be the form of factor that will be required to do the transactions.
Yeah, exactly. What I like a lot is, like, for example, the concept. I'm learning a lot about this, about the world, and about when they speak with me, I always gain something new. And they say, look, what we're trying now is actively in South America and in Africa. And they're speaking directly with governments and with head of states, and they're trying to see if they can get a digital wallet in place so that a person that never has the facility, capabilities to open a bank account can have their some value stored, and then allows them as well to do more transactions. And that's better for everybody. Because
Correct.
when transactions go up, everybody benefits. GDP goes up, businesses rise, people are trading more. So facilitating the trade in the world and in the country and in the city and in the village, it's in everybody's benefit.
Yes, agreed. Completely agreed. Right, and I think that's the goal.
Yeah.
And think from an evolution perspective, like we were talking about, right?
Yeah.
There's an element of evolution every decade or every few years, right? So you've got payments, you've got digital payments, which are online, and you've got contactless. From contactless, you've got mobile wallets. From mobile wallets, you've got the Apple Pay, Google Pay, and then you've got biometrics. And now you're thinking about a new currency in itself. So these are building blocks, right?
Yeah.
That essentially help the evolution along the way. So, and I think this is the way to view it. If you start thinking about it's either this or that or this or that, the evolution stops,
Yeah.
because it's not. It has to be complementary in a seamless way, because technology is advancing in 50 million ways in different directions, right? It cannot be antagonistic. It has to be complementary for it to be seamlessly moving forward. And I think the jumps are because of the seamless movement forward. For example, like I was saying, the payments and the mobile phone,
Yeah.
they're all evolving, but they're evolving in a systematic way, which essentially connects to each other. So same way as you see all these other building blocks, including crypto, all this is integrating into a seamless journey that's going to make payments a lot more systematic in the future as well, and a lot more encompassing. It could beyond cash, for example, right? So
Yeah, and I'm very excited about when I see certain um, when I see certain progress. Like now, the European Union has decided that they're going to put a task force together for the digital euro version. And okay, it's still far away until they are at the end result, but at least they started with working on a digital version of the euro. Um, I know that China is very far in their own version, but they have also been working on it for many years, and they have already, like in provinces and big cities, they have already been testing it. But still, there's still work to do for them to roll it out completely. But at least that progress is made, and that can be copied potentially by other countries. Then they don't have to do all the hard work.
correct.
And then there's other countries as well that are working on potentially on something similar. How would it be easier for digital payment companies to integrate a digital version of a euro or a dollar or any other currency into their system, or is it just the same thing as somebody having cash in the bank and exchanging that for whatever they pay with their cards?
I think so. Obviously, it's a tough question, because it's from a regulatory sense, right? I think the attempt is there to digitize economies, and in digitization comes the understanding of equating values of cash to that digital currency. So I think that is something that is still being debated, how it is done, because today the physical money is also digital in nature,
Yes.
right? So it's exactly that point that is being debated, whether there is a need to bring that digital currency, because the equation of that digital currency is exactly what your physical money values in. So I think it's about how easy it might become in the future. So I think it's just about like I said, right, form factors should not matter in the future, as long as the means to transact digitally exist. Now, whether that is using physical money in your bank account, whether it means you have crypto stored in a vault or online, or it is digital currency that you have, everything essentially translates into currency being used digitally. So I think if you think from that perspective, whatever form factor exists really doesn't matter, as much as the journey of using digital payments for services, goods, and transactions passing. For example, Visa today has a product called Visa Direct, which essentially sends instantaneous payments from your card to my card, right? P2P. Or if you want to send to your mother back home, it can go back to her card or debit, her debit card automatically and get credited either to her account or keep it on the debit card where she can transact. So
Really?
I think it's and like I'm saying, right? I mean, this the form factor is changing in terms of the payments itself, right? You and me can instantaneously send money anywhere we want, either to each other or to any part of the world, as long as there's the infrastructure which is being set up to support it. And that's where revolution is happening. As I said, the rails are the most important thing, and these rails are already existing with Visa, for example, right? So once you leverage these rails and connect the dots between consumers, businesses, etc., the currency and form factor should not matter as much in the future.
Do you think it would be possible to pay the rent by by credit card one day? Because I would love to get amount for my rent.
Actually, it is going to be. The future is headed. I mean, if you're thinking Dubai, yeah, absolutely, it is there. I mean, the option exists for a number of the developers already, and it's slowly starting to pick up across others as well. So you
and
will
to
see.
landlord as well. Me, because my landlord is not a developer, but I understand that you need to start somewhere first.
Correct.
The installments you can just probably take it away with your credit card.
I mean, the bigger developers are already thinking about it from a mortgage, and there are some. And when you started think about it, I mean, you could buy a car today on your credit card.
If you have enough credit.
Absolutely, but I mean, if you think about it, if you're buying a car which is at a showroom, they have the machines. You can buy a second-hand car for a smaller amount under your budget, or if you have a higher limit, you can actually buy a car. I mean, I had the option of buying the car that I was getting on the credit card, and I was going to get miles on it. So obviously I didn't, because I was looking at an auto loan at that particular point in time. But I'm just saying
But the
that
down payment you can pay.
absolutely down payment also. I mean, there are the means to get what you want generally from a payment device perspective is there for you now. It never used to be. Imagine going to buy a car back 15-20 years carrying cash, right? Or trying to get a loan in that time frame, right, to get the cash and then have the physical cash not transported through the account, but carrying it to the device, hiding it, putting it in a bag or a box and carrying it across. So it's that entire journey, right? I mean,
It's stressful.
It's stressful, right? I mean, and I used to live in Pakistan, and we used to be even when we bought an apartment. I remember my mother and my father carrying cash in briefcases to pay the down payment for the house, and then the full payment was actually cash transacted at a bank, because at that time the online payment has a threshold, so you couldn't send a certain amount beyond. So it was physical, completely physical. So very different infrastructure now, right, across.
Yeah, definitely, and it helps also so much, because what if something would have happened, and all that cash would just be devastating if something happened with your parents when they wanted to make the down payment for the house. So you solve a lot of problems. Do you think we're also creating problems?
In what sense?
Sometimes when you solve problems, you also find out that you create new challenges or new problems that you need to solve again.
So there are. I mean, if you think about it, there are angles of fraud that comes in when you're thinking from a credit payment perspective, because the payments are happening in an environment. It's not physical, it's digital. So you and I, if you're a business and I'm the person buying from you, you don't know me.
Yeah.
Right? The only way you're trusting me is the payment means that I was being authenticated and validated, right? So frauds are there, whether it's credit or debit. From a usage perspective, people skim cards, use credentials, use fake credentials to buy stuff. So fraud is one of the drawbacks of digital payment, right? But there is a lot being done for it. I mean, there is 3D Secure enablement across online merchants, which essentially prompts you to get this OTP, right? So if you're
Yeah.
transacting, it has to be linked to your phone. So it reduces the form factor. Visa has a system called VAVRM, which it's trying to help and integrate um, into the payment ecosystems with banks, etc., which monitors transactions in real time to make sure it calls out any fraudulent transactions that may be happening at any point in time, right? So there's a lot being done in this space, but yes, that's one of the drawbacks that I could potentially call out.
Yeah, man, I did read somewhere that there's quite a lot of big numbers if you add all that fraud combined up. It is serious, like organizations that they look at it as a business, you know. They're not like some guy in some room trying. No, this is like the proper organized crime worldwide, seeing this as a way of as making money
Yeah.
instead of extortion of local business owners. Now they're like, hey, we found this new way how we can make money, and chances are that perhaps we get caught or not, but the opportunity is there to make money. So, where do you with the fraud part? Where I think it's hard to stop people, right, from really doing wrong things in life.
I think it's hard to stop every individual from
Yeah.
doing wrong in life, right? But what you can do is put measures in place, and I think that's what's happening in the payment industry. As it's evolving, in parallel, there is a strong focus on making sure that you are uh, protecting people as much as possible, whether it's in the form of having real-time systems that enable triggers, right? Or whether it's in the form of in the form of authentication of the transaction itself, right? Because you link it to the ID, you link it to the phone, you link it to the mobile number, you link it to the email. So a lot of the triggers elements also help. So the whole ecosystem is now evolving, right? As a fast pace, so are fraudsters,
Yeah.
right? They're also evolving, but it doesn't mean that you've got, on this side, no one protecting the consumer. There is a lot of effort happening on that front. I mean, you've heard of ethical hacking, so a lot of companies hire hackers to essentially hack and hack the systems and figure out if the transactions can be made, the fraudulent transactions can be done on their systems, how can they be done. So they try to plug the way of how hackers could actually go in and get into the systems, or whether people can use loopholes within the system to do fraudulent transactions. So I think a lot is being done in that space. And
Yeah. No, I fully agree with you. I mean, recently my credit card got compromised, and they texted me, they called me straight away. Even I did not know what was going on. I didn't even receive any text messages yet, and their system already detected it, and they're like, "We're going to send you a replacement." And I also try to pay as much as possible with my credit card, because I don't know if it's true, but I heard that every payment is insured with the credit card, so you can get the money back if something goes wrong, as long as you don't have put the OTP and all that stuff yourself. And with a debit card, if you lose money, you're not insured. Is that correct?
Yes, it depends though. I mean, how the product is constructed, how it's being thought through, whether it has the insurance or not. It completely depends on that front, right? So, but the insurances exist. So, if the product owner or the bank or the institution wants to enable it, they can. There's a higher price for cash, which is linked to your account because the exposure is much higher. But on the credit side, as long as the credit extension, if there's a bigger transaction that happens and is fraudulent, the systems pop it up immediately. Same as debit, but debit then is cash is gone, right? So it's not credit, it can't be reversed from a merchant perspective. The cash can disappear from your account. So I think the insurance element exists. It's just about the coverage. Coverage may be more expensive on the debit side. That's why a lot of companies may not be offering it.
No. Look, Bilal Alavi, it was such a pleasure having you here. I mean, you have answered and provided so much insights into the digital payment industry, and I think it was very, I learned a lot, and I'm sure the people watching would have also picked something up. So thank you so much for coming on this podcast and being here and sharing your opinion with us.
Thank you, Simon. It was a pleasure here, coming here, and I hope I was able to give value, add value from my perspective, and I hope the people who watch this can at least have an understanding of some of the basic principles. The story at the start is my favorite, right? How it all started. So it'll be interesting to see how people think through this.
Well, it'd be lovely one day to have you come back, and then we could add some new stories to the evolution. So for the people that watched, my name is Simon Snowder, and this was my guest, Bilal Alavi. You can watch this on YouTube and on Spotify and many other channels. Thank you for watching. Thank you for coming, Bilal. My
Thank you,
pleasure
Simon.
to have you here. And goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.